May 17, 2013, Arizona-Mexico border checkpoint. A routine traffic stop turned into something far bigger.
Here you go, officer.
Border Patrol agents pulled over
What is
a
the
white
purpose of your
sedan
travel today?
and asked the driver for his papers. The man behind the wheel was 51 years old, stocky, with salt and pepper hair. His name was José Manuel Martínez. He handed over his identification without a word. Within minutes, the agents learned he was wanted for murder in Alabama. They took him into custody and flew him back east. In a small interview room in Lawrence County, Alabama, Martínez sat across from Detective T. J. Watts. The recorder was running. Martínez looked straight into the camera and spoke in a calm, steady voice. "I've killed over 35 men," he said. "Maybe more." He was not bragging. He was stating a fact. For more than 3 decades, Martínez had lived 2 completely separate lives. By day, he was a quiet grandfather and farm worker in the Central Valley of California. By night, he was the Sinaloa Cartel's most reliable debt collector. When someone owed the cartel for cocaine or heroin and refused to pay, authorities said, the cartel sent Martínez. He kept 25% of whatever he recovered. If the debt stayed unpaid, he made sure the debtor never owed anyone again. But at that moment in the interview room, none of the investigators fully understood how deep the blood trail actually ran. They were about to find out. But the story that Martínez began to unfold in that Alabama interview room did not start on the border. Back in the early 1980s, the Central Valley of California was still a quiet stretch of farmland and small towns. José Manuel Martínez was barely out of his teens. Born on 13 June 1962 in Fresno, he had grown up working the fields alongside his Mexican immigrant parents. Life was hard, but it was predictable. Until one day it was not. In 1978, when he was just 16, Martínez made his first deadly decision. His older sister had been killed. He blamed a local man. Instead of waiting for police, he took matters into his own hands. That single act of revenge taught him something important. He could kill and walk away. 2 years later, the violence became professional. On 21 October 1980, Martínez climbed into the passenger seat of a car outside Lindsay, California. The target was David Bedolla, 23 years old. As the car rolled slowly past Bedolla on the street between Lindsay and Strathmore in Tulare County, Martínez raised a .22 caliber pistol and fired 4 times. Bedolla died in front of his wife and brothers. The car kept moving. Martínez vanished into the night. Local police called it a gang-related drive-by. They had no idea they had just witnessed the first contract killing of a man who would later become one of the cartel's most effective enforcers. Martínez did not stop there. Within 24 months, he struck again. On 1 October 1982, he killed Sylvester Ayon, 30 years old, near Santa Ynez in Santa Barbara County. 19 days later, on 19 October, he lured 22-year-old Raul Gonzalez to a remote spot east of Porterville and executed him with the same cold efficiency. Each time he used the same method: careful surveillance, a simple lure, multiple shots to make sure the job was finished, and then a quick disappearance. Word began to spread in the tight-knit underworld of the valley. This young farm worker from Rich Grove was reliable. He did not talk. He did not leave evidence. And most important, he followed orders without hesitation. By the early 1980s, Martínez had already crossed a line most men never even approach. He had turned killing into a skill. But he was still working small. Local disputes, personal scores. The cartel had not yet noticed him. That was about to change. But it happened sooner than Martínez expected. Word of his reliability reached the right people inside the Sinaloa Cartel. By the mid-1980s, the organization needed men who could operate quietly inside the United States. Martínez fit the profile perfectly. He already knew how to watch a target for days without being noticed. He knew how to lure someone to an isolated spot, and he never left loose ends. The cartel made him an offer he did not refuse. From then on, Martínez became their full-time debt collector. An intermediary would call with a name, a location, and an amount owed. Martínez packed a small bag, bought a commercial plane ticket, and flew to whichever state the job required. Over the next 2 decades, he worked in at least 12 different states. His method was simple and effective. He spent 3 to 7 days watching the target. He learned the man's daily routine. Then he made contact. Sometimes he offered a fake job. Sometimes he staged a minor traffic stop. Other times, he simply said the cartel wanted to talk about the debt. Once the target showed up, Martinez gave him one clear choice: pay now or pay later with blood. If the man handed over the cash, Martinez kept 25% as his commission and delivered the rest. If the man refused or tried to run, the conversation ended with gunfire. Multiple shots, close range, always to the head or chest. He checked the pulse afterward to make sure. Then he walked away. The money flowed. In February 2000, Martinez killed Santiago Perez, 56 years old, outside Pixley, California. In February 2007, he executed 25-year-old Jose Alvarado near McFarland. And in November 2006, he drove 2 men, Javier Huerta and Gustavo Olivares Rivas, deep into Ocala National Forest in Florida. They had $210,000 in cartel money. Martinez took the cash, then killed both of them. Some jobs were strictly cartel business. Others he handled for personal reasons. Either way, the result was the same. At home in Rich Grove, California, he returned to his family as if nothing had happened. He played with his grandchildren. He worked the fields. He attended church. Neighbors described him as quiet and polite. For more than 20 years, the system worked flawlessly. Local police treated each killing as an isolated drug deal gone bad. No one connected the dots across state lines. Martinez believed he was invisible, but the bodies were starting to pile up. And in the quiet offices of the Tulare County Sheriff's Department, a few investigators were beginning to notice a disturbing pattern. Yet Martinez kept moving exactly as before. In the early 2010s, he was still flying across the country on cartel orders. On 23 March 2009, he executed Juan Bautista Moreno in Tulare County. 6 months later, on 30 September, he killed Joaquin Barragan. Then on 7 February 2011, he took out Gonzalo Urquieta. Each time the pattern held. Days of patient surveillance, a carefully chosen lure, multiple shots, and a clean exit. He could feel the temperature rising. Rumors inside the cartel spoke of increased heat from American law enforcement. Still, Martinez made the same decision every time a new name arrived. He packed his bag, bought the ticket, and handled the job. The money was too good and his reputation too valuable to walk away. Meanwhile, the pieces were finally starting to connect on the other side. Investigators in the Tulare County Sheriff's Department had begun reviewing dozens of old unsolved cases. Cold files from 1980 through 2011 suddenly shared the same signature. Middle-aged Hispanic victims, drug debts, close-range shootings, and no usable evidence left behind. The district attorney's office quietly formed a task force. They pulled phone records, flight manifests, and witness statements that had sat untouched for years. By early 2013, the picture sharpened. Authorities in Alabama issued a warrant for Martinez in connection with the March 4th murder of Jose Ruiz in Danville. The victim owed the cartel money. Martinez had flown in, handled the debt the usual way, and left. This time, the trail led back to him. The FBI joined the effort. A multi-state task force began hunting the unseen enforcer who had operated in the shadows for 3 decades. They did not yet have his full name on every file, but they knew the man existed. They knew he moved between California, Alabama, Florida, and at least 9 other states. And they knew he was still active. Martinez heard whispers of the warrant. He understood the danger was no longer theoretical. Yet he continued his routine. He returned home to Rich Grove after each job, played with his grandchildren, and waited for the next call. He still believed the net could not reach him. Then, in May 2013, the cartel needed one final collection south of the border. Martinez made the decision to cross into Mexico and return the same way he always had. It would be the last time he tried. On 17 May 2013, Martinez pulled up to the Arizona-Mexico border checkpoint in a white sedan. Border Patrol agents ran a standard check. The Alabama warrant flashed across their screen within seconds. He offered no resistance. Handcuffs clicked. Within hours, he was on a plane heading east. They placed him in a small interview room in Lawrence County, Alabama. Detective T.J. Watts sat across the table.
Why did you lie to us?
The recorder rolled. Martinez looked straight into the lens and began to speak. What came out next changed everything. Instead of silence or a lawyer, he opened the floodgates. "I've killed over 35 men," he said again. Then he started naming them, one by one. Dates, locations, details only the killer could know. He described the surveillance, the lures, the exact number of shots, even the way he checked for a pulse afterward. He talked about the $210,000 taken in Florida. He talked about jobs in California, Alabama, and states investigators had not yet connected. The decision was his alone. Later, he told authorities it was time to pay for what he had done. No coercion, no deal on the table. He simply started talking and did not stop. Investigators sat stunned. The man they had hunted for decades was now handing them a roadmap of 3 decades of cartel violence inside the United States. The FBI was called in immediately. Tulare County prosecutors and Florida authorities joined the call. Within days, the coordinated effort exploded. Warrants, extradition requests, and evidence transfers began flying between states. Back in Mexico, the cartel learned their most trusted collector was in custody. Word spread fast through the organization. The Black Hand had fallen. Martinez kept talking.
I understand you weren't there.
He gave them names they had never heard. He gave them bodies they had never found. He gave them the kind of confession that prosecutors dream about, but almost never receive. Yet even as the flood of information poured out, everyone in the room understood one thing. This was only the beginning. The real reckoning was still to come. Martinez had handed authorities a confession that spanned 3 decades and 12 states. Prosecutors moved quickly. In Alabama, he faced the murder of José Ruiz. He made another deliberate choice. He pleaded guilty. The court sentenced him to 50 years in prison for that single killing. But California wanted him more. In October 2015, Martinez stood in a Tulare County courtroom and pleaded guilty to 9 separate murders plus 1 attempted murder. The victims stretched from the 1980s into the 2000s. The judge handed down 10 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. He would never walk free again. Florida still had its claim. In 2019, a jury in Ocala heard the evidence of the double murder in Ocala National Forest. Javier Huerta and Gustavo Olivares Rivas had been executed after Martinez took their $210,000. The jury convicted him. They chose life in prison over the death penalty. With each plea and each sentence, the full weight of his choices settled on him. The man who had moved like a ghost for 33 years now sat in a California state prison, his double life completely erased. The quiet grandfather from Rich Grove, the cartel's most reliable collector, the father and grandfather who once returned home as if nothing had happened, existed no more. For the Sinaloa Cartel, the loss was strategic. Their most effective debt collector inside the United States was gone. The Black Hand that had enforced their rules for decades had finally been removed from the board. Some cold cases across the country remained officially unsolved, their files still open. But the man responsible for most of them had confessed in detail. 35 murders, maybe more. 3 decades of silent violence across the American heartland. All of it carried out by one ordinary-looking farm worker who had turned killing into a profession. And now it was over. If this story shocked you, hit like, subscribe, and tell us in the comments. Which detail surprised you the most?